Cover 3 Tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Kanell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe. Smash that like and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate. Lots to get to here on an Upon Further Review Monday. We've got Poll Assassin looking at a top 25 poll that has been thrown up into the air, and we'll see where the pieces have landed after a chaotic Week 13. We've got some predictions for the college football playoff rankings release packaged in there. We will look at the coaching carousel, which I think, are any power conference shops going to open?
We can't put that, like, if you're handicapping it, it's not zero, right? Like, is the number, is it a half? Is it one? Is it 1.5?
I mean, we are in like surprises, retirements, like that's sort of where we're at right now. But we have not gotten a chance to hit on some of the G5 action, and we might have some finality in Greenville as of this morning or later this week officially. So we'll get into all that for just a little bit. First, and a punt for the review, of course, where we will look into the chaotic Big 12 title scenarios and much, much more. Programming note, I apologize. Tom and I went 90 minutes, and at the very end, the tailgate was like, so what's the schedule for next week? And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even think about the schedule. Well, here it is. 11 a.m. today, you're here, a punt for the review. Tomorrow, Tuesday, 11 a.m., we will do our big game breakdown for rivalry week. Then at night, after the rankings come out, we're going to say approximately 8:30-ish, we'll be doing our rankings reaction. Then, and this is important, the Cover 3 Locks episode for rivalry week, as it normally is, will be on Wednesday. So today, upon further review, big game breakdown Tuesday. Then Wednesday, we'll be doing our locks episode to get you set. So you've got all that for your holiday travel. Similar schedule while we're sitting here having a meeting. Similar schedule the following week because your boys right here are going to be on CBS Sports Network on Friday from Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, previewing the Big Ten championship game, previewing championship week as a whole. So make sure if you're in the area, hit us up, come say hi, and be sure to check us out on CBS Sports Network. But because of travel, that means championship week locks will be on Wednesday, big game breakdown on Tuesday, upon further review Monday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday live shows the next 2 weeks, 11 a.m. Woo! How we feeling? Danny, you want to rank Atlanta Braves?
If you want. I can definitely. I was doing a lot of research on them, and it would be fantastic. By the way, there might be some special guest appearances in person in Indianapolis. Friends of the show, maybe making their first appearance on CBS Sports Network with us.
Okay.
So that might be worth coming to see who it potentially could be in Indianapolis if they want to swing by the show. Love getting to meet up with some of our guests.
Always. How we doing, Bud? Danny, how's it feeling?
Feels great.
Feeling good, man.
Okay.
Great morning.
All right.
Phenomenal morning.
Can we address the Chipper Jen stuff?
Larry?
Is it done?
Larry.
You mean Larry? Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Absolutely. The most overrated Brave of all time. We can definitely talk about him if you want to.
Should Hideo Nomo have won?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Or you could look at it as one of, I always kind of assume baseball players were on the soft side. They take a month off for a little torn hamstring. I didn't know they also had thin skin. Like, I thought they were a little bit tougher with press and media and being able to take criticism. But probably the thing I'm most disappointed by is that learning about Larry was that, because I wasn't aware of this, was that he was actually committed to the University of Miami coming out of high school before he ended up turning pro. And so that means, and now he's a Florida Gator fan. Like, he's 0 for 2 on his picks. So he may be a career 300 hitter in Major League Baseball, but he is batting 0, well below the Mendoza line on his choice of colleges to root for. And then the other thing, I've adjusted my philosophy now because, I've always liked to poke and prod the bear and take shots at different people. But I think I might start tagging my tweets as sensitive material.
Tagging your own tweets?
Yeah, I'll mark it as sensitive so they know, so they don't have to see it. And if it bothers them, then I can go ahead because I don't like getting blocked. I couldn't even respond to him. I couldn't even respond. So I'll make sure I label it as sensitive because what I wanted to tell him, there was a couple things I wanted to tell him. One was like, go after my NFL career all you want, but my Florida State career, I would stack up with anybody. And he's calling out some of my interceptions at Florida State. But there's only really one way to handle this, like men. Like there's one way.
Arm wrestle?
Golf course.
Golf course. Damn right, bud. Let's get out and handle it like real men. No shots. Mano y mano. Well, you name the number, however many you want to play per hole. Let's go.
There we go. Hey, Chipper Jones, it's out there. Stop. Take those Twitter fingers and put those hands on the club.
Exactly. That's
Let's
what
go.
I'm talking about.
What's the movie where the guy's like, how much you want to play for? And he goes, however much makes you uncomfortable?
I think that's Jordan's line. Like that's Michael Jordan's line.
Okay.
When he's playing somebody and you never know, like, what are you going to play a billionaire for? And like, is there any amount that there's no number that he would hear that he would say no to? So he always puts it back. What do you want to play for? And it's like, whatever makes you uncomfortable.
I want to
This
see
isn't really
sweat.
fair. That's so not fair because he can't get uncomfortable at all.
Well,
Although I'll
and then
have
he's
Chipper
already
Jones
in your head.
uncomfortable.
That statement alone is mind games. That's just gonna like you're duck hooking that first tee shot after hearing that.
That is a great call from Chris. That TNT. Oh, a couple people putting it on there. Yeah, TNT, the match. Let's go,
Danny. Hey,
My only problem with the whole situation was that you didn't have Andrew Jones in the top 10.
I know. And I actually responded to some hardcore Braves podcast because they were very upset. I said that is the one omission that I would have gone back, but I had to put several third basemen in there.
I know.
to
Yeah,
make
I was so
sure
excited
that I
about
covered
the
that
show.
position. So that would be the one that I would go back and make sure I included. That's the only one. That's the only omission.
Thanks,
Andrew Jones.
Thanks for indulging that, Danny. It was
Yes.
funny to see that play out. I knew you had the hits loaded. All right, let's get to the business at hand. Starting with Holes House. Well, AP voters had some decisions to make because when you get Alabama and Ole Miss and Texas A&M all taking losses on the same weekend, we got to do some reshuffling. We got to figure out who's going to be moving up into what spots. We've got to figure out where some of these teams are going to be slotted moving down. Additionally, the challenge for the AP voters was to figure out where Indiana stacks up against the other one-loss teams in the country. And their answer was to put Indiana at number 10. That is one spot ahead of Boise State. That is behind Miami and SMU. Our top four all stayed the same. Notre Dame, Georgia, Tennessee, Miami, SMU, all ahead of Indiana. In terms of where the teams that lost fell, Alabama down 6 spots to number 13. Ole Miss down 6 spots to number 15. Texas A&M drops from 15 to 20. BYU, Colorado, Army, all falling as well, but not all the way out. We didn't have a lot of action breaking in and out. Washington State is out after losing to Oregon State, but that just means, come on back, Missouri. Can't get rid of them. You know, it's with you for life. That's what Missouri's a tattoo. 2024 Missouri is a tattoo. You know, we're going to be wearing it all season. At this point, I've come to accept it. Tom,
It's definitely the tramp stamp tattoo as well. Like it's not like it's not like a normal. It's the tramp stamp one.
100%. Tom, what'd you make of some of the adjustments to the rankings?
I mean, overall, I don't think there's really anything you could complain too much about. I think most of it makes sense. I think there are some individual ballots that are just kind of mind-numbing, but overall, like you're nitpicking some of these things. But for one, and he's always got a crazy ballot. I think he just enjoys the attention. John Wilner has Georgia 3rd and Tennessee 4th. If you want to argue that you could put Georgia 3rd, I would listen to it. And I'd be like, you know what? You're making some salient points. Why do you have Tennessee 4th?
I was looking at that too, because I was looking at, should SMU Miami be ahead of Tennessee as a 2-loss team versus 2 1-loss teams? Does it make sense that their win against, because I was going to say their win against Bama looks worse, or excuse me, yeah, the win against Bama looks worse, but their win over Oklahoma and Florida looks better, I guess. But like, it's not like they're huge wins. I'm just trying to think where you could make a case for it.
There were a lot of teams that a line going into the weekend was like, how many bowl eligible teams have they beat? But look, Florida's bowl eligible. Oklahoma's bowl eligible. Michigan's bowl eligible. Like, you got a lot of these teams that all picked up their 6 wins. So if that was going to be your stat that you're using to compare top teams, that, to your point, Tennessee's resume got better when those other teams won.
But I mean, just for a direct comparison, because he's got Tennessee at 4 and he has Texas at 7. Both have lost to Georgia. Tennessee has also lost to Arkansas. Both have beaten, Oklahoma. Texas also beat Vandy, which is the other team that beat Alabama, which is what he's giving Tennessee mostly the credit for, is that 7-point win over Alabama, which looks a little weaker week by week. Like, I don't understand the logic here. I think it's just, it would get him attention.
Did you guys see the graphic? South Carolina, I don't know if he made the stat, but he definitely put the graphic out there. Guy on Twitter. Have you played at least 2 SEC teams with a winning record in conference play? Yes, obviously we play in the SEC is 15 teams. It says also us.
UMass.
Yeah. Wait, no. Texas. Texas has played 1 SEC team with a winning record.
I mean, that's there when they do their resume on, the selection show, it says key wins, and it's still Vanderbilt or Colorado State. Like, those are their key wins because they don't have anything else to go by. Michigan now, maybe they put Michigan back in there now that Michigan's over 500, I guess. But again, it speaks volumes about where they are. With that being said, and I know we'll have a lot of time to get to these, what happens if they do lose against Texas A&M? Are they still in?
Yes, I think last weekend's results kind of saved Texas a little bit.
Loss counter basically being that since they're a 2-loss team, they're still going to be ahead of all those other teams that picked up their 3rd loss over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
I'm not entirely sure on this.
Me neither.
I think you're right, but it would open the door for perhaps like a second SEC team, or sorry, ACC team, like
right. Just Clemson. If Clemson beats South Carolina,
or SMU,
right.
Or like if SMU beats Miami, 11-2. Texas.
If you had to go resume for resume, you'd probably want it to be SMU, right? They have a better resume than Miami.
They have the home loss to BYU, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what's crazy? Is there and this is what drives me nuts about trying to defend the ACC. Duke is 8-3. Like that, and they won that game with 6 turnovers. Like, finding a way to win that game, that should be a good win, but it just doesn't feel like it because it's Duke. And yet, if it was Vanderbilt and you're winning against Vanderbilt, which is listed as a Texas key win, it's like, oh, that's a great win this year because Vanderbilt's so much better. And yet Duke might be one of the best stories of the year that nobody's talking about.
It's hard to watch Duke.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Like, Manny Diaz has done a tremendous job. I mean, he had a defensive line that was totally gone. He had to rebuild that thing. He has done he has done some coach of the year nominee type stuff that is worth looking at and celebrating what he's done. But the style of football, I mean, they even say it themselves. We're a drag you into the sewer type team. So it's kind of tough to watch football in the sewer. It's all sloshy, it's a little bit ugly, but hey, to your point, Duke's 8-3, and that's that win count is something that should be looked at when we're looking at SMU's schedule.
Somebody brought up that Duke has faced 2 starting quarterbacks all year.
Is that true?
So they definitely got the guy who ended up being Northwestern's backup because they benched him in Mike Wright. I guess at the time he was a starter. So I think you probably need to use some rationale or some common sense on this. They got the UConn backup. I think Middle Tennessee, I'm pretty sure, played the starter. North Carolina was Criswell, who's played most of the year, but that's obviously what's his name, Johnson, who got knocked out for the year against Minnesota. They didn't face Haynes King, right? They got Pyron. Obviously, the FSU was on their backup by the time they played.
Well, and by the way, they lost to Georgia Tech.
No, they faced Haynes King.
Pyron scored the first touchdown there. Was that a split situation?
22 at 31 for 167 yards, 2 touchdowns. And
That's when they were using King or Pyron in the like for the goal line stuff. Okay. Florida State was on the backup. SMU technically on the backup. This is why I don't think this is like a full good thing, because obviously we think Jennings is better than Preston Stone. NC State's on the backup technically, right? Because
we're doing a lot of technically here.
Yeah,
I'm not with it on this because Criswell's the quarterback at the end of the season. He's going to
the Hokies one is pretty legit, right? Like Colin Schlee is a pretty good step down from what's his name, but
Kyron Drones.
Yeah, I don't think it totally holds up. I saw it and I checked. Like, it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not going to roll.
Checked on air.
Misinformation. What do you make about Arizona State jumping up to 14?
I think this will be interesting with the committee. Are they close enough within striking distance where a Big 12 champ leapfrogs Boise State? And I don't know if that was the meaning of it for this, but I think it was jarring to a lot of people, myself included, to see Boise State in that first round bye. And they are, and this is where I would caution Boise State fans to start, celebrating a little too much and booking your tickets for whatever quarterfinal site that would be. Because I still think if it's Arizona State and they do win and they beat, who do they have this final weekend?
Arizona.
Kansas State. Oh, Arizona. Yeah, duh. So that's not a good one. But if they win the Big 12 championship, I think that'll be a tougher win. But UNLV is the top 25 opponent for Boise State after winning, over the weekend. But I think that's probably and that'll be interesting to see if it's within striking distance where you could potentially get that first round bye.
Boise has to win too.
Right. Yeah. And then does that, I was looking up odds because there's odds. Boise's like minus 300 to make the playoff. Tulane is like plus 300, but there's no odds on UNLV because that's what's interesting. If UNLV has 2 wins over Power 4 opponents, and they have a loss to Syracuse. What's that?
I think
you think it would be Army then?
I think Army would go over UNLV. Yeah.
But what if Tulane? So if it's Army? What if Tulane won the American?
If UNLV beats Boise and it's not Tulane, then it is because Army beat Tulane in the American Championship.
Right.
I think Army is going to have a better resume potentially than UNLV because Army's loss was to a playoff team in the Irish. Meanwhile, like a very luck box Syracuse team blasted Boise in Vegas. So I think they'll probably do the comparison, like who is more likely to give us like a Liberty type showing. Remember Liberty versus Oregon last year. And I'm not really sure the answer there is UNLV. Like UNLV might be able to play, like UNLV beat Kansas and Kansas obviously, beat Colorado. So I just think, are they going to take UNLV over Army?
I don't think so.
I think Army would go. It also kind of implies that Army beats Navy.
Yeah. If Army wins out, I think they would get in if Boise loses. Back to the original question on Arizona State. I mean, I think it makes sense where they're ranked because they have they've beaten Kansas State and BYU in the last 2 weeks, which is good because it gives them 2 ranked wins. But those are also the 2 bowl eligible Power 4 teams they've beaten all year. Mm-hmm. They've got the Cincinnati loss. They've got the Texas Tech loss. And the combined record of the Big 12 teams they've played so far this season, even including BYU and Kansas State, is 18-30. So you look at the overall resume, it's like they need to win to get in. It's their only path. That's why they're ranked where they are.
We will do some Big 12 tiebreakers a little bit upon further review. Anything else from the rankings or, again, like I said, key questions that you have going into Tuesday night?
Why isn't Illinois in the top? No, I'm just kidding. No.
So in the CBS, we talked about this on Saturday night, Tom, and I was interested because in the CBS Sports 134, which you can find on CBSSports.com right now, we did have the Notre Dame jump Penn State, which feels eye test, with little vibesy, but I get it based on what has Penn State looked like. What has it looked like to watch them go out and try to land the plane to try to get this thing home with just 1 loss after the Ohio State defeat versus a Notre Dame team that has just continued to just thump everybody. So that was an interesting, swap right there. It won't impact the playoff because Notre Dame with no conference championship, we're really just talking about where you are in the bracket. Who are you going to feed into? They would like to get the 5, I'm sure, more than the 6, but the home playoff game, as long as they can take care of business against USC, they'll be in one of those spots more than likely.
Yeah, I do think there is a chance Notre Dame jumps Penn State just because they get the big 35-point win over a ranked Army team, whereas Penn State struggled to beat Minnesota by a point on the road, and Penn State has struggled on the road all year. Like, they don't have a lot of blowout wins that you kind of need to get a little more respect.
Yeah. All right. Coming up on the other side, taking a spin on the coaching carousel. We've got a few more openings we haven't quite had a chance to address, and it looks like the Pirates might have their future secured in Greenville. All that and more next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, might have some assistant coaching carousel action to keep us intrigued as we watch everything shuffle throughout the month of December. But right now, it is mostly at the G5. Let's take a spin. Come on, Mel Tucker. So on Sunday, we had the 6th job in the American Athletic Conference open. Woo! This is a new world. So Tulsa announced that Kevin Wilson is out. He did not even complete his 2nd full season. Ryan Switzer, that's a name. He's going to be the interim coach for the final game for the Golden Hurricane. And now we've got, let's see, it's Charlotte, FAU, Tulsa, ECU. Who am I missing?
Rice. Rice was already, right?
Right. And what's the 6th?
I don't know, but ECU filled up this morning.
Yeah, they've got a board. Yep. They got a board meeting on. They've got a board meeting on Wednesday to make it official. But Blake Harrell, who's done a really good job getting that team now to 7-4 heading into the last week of the season. He was the defensive coordinator, promoted to be the interim coach. But what's the takeaway from that hire for the Pirates?
I mean, they changed their coach from an offensive guy to Harrell, and they also changed quarterbacks right around that time. So I will be honest here. It is a little bit difficult for me to figure out how much of this was Harrell and how much of this was the QB change. Like, what is our percentile accountability here? I don't know, but the vibes have been better. Now does this happen if they actually lose to Tulsa? Because they screwed around in that game a ton.
Right.
And
yes.
that was Tulsa's horrid, and it looks like they have high schoolers playing for them legitimately. But does this happen if they choke that away fully? Because they ended up pulling it out. Every team's entitled to have a bad game, I guess. But they're scoring a lot more points for sure.
I've got a counter. Does this happen if Western Kentucky doesn't go on a losing streak late in the season?
What am I missing here?
If Tyson Helton was a candidate for the ECU job and Western Kentucky finished strong, won Conference USA, are you maybe feeling a little bit better about that? Are you?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Are you spending? Because I think that any of the Joe Sloan or Garrett Riley situations were going to be expensive. And I think that obviously promoting your defensive coordinator, removing the interim tag is among the most inexpensive coaching changes that you can make. I don't know what the contract or what the financial situation would look like with Tyson Helton, but I think that this is a spot where you look at the war chest, you look at what you're going to have to spend. If the vibes are good and you think he can keep your quarterback and enough key players that have been a part of this late season turnaround, you try to save a little bit money and spend it elsewhere.
That makes sense. The Sloan thing is interesting. And I don't have any insider info about this, but given that LSU lost Underwood to Michigan, and the whole power play thing last year with him and Denbrock, and Denbrock ended up going to the Irish, it seems like they're pretty committed to Joe Sloan. And I think Joe Sloan's probably a good coach, right? They've had a lot of problems this year. on offense that are likely not his fault. But is Brian Kelly safe enough that he does not have to make some kind of like coordinator sacrifice?
Ooh.
LSU, like he's got that kind of cachet. Just like I'm not making any changes because they're going to want their pound of flesh.
Yeah, I don't think beating Vanderbilt's going to be enough to like totally reverse the vibes right there.
Probably not. Yeah.
So,
because I mean, as LSU fans saw last year, firing the defensive coordinator fixed it.
yeah, you can't. You already did it on defense.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, sure, if you really need it, I don't know if that's really the problem that you're facing right now, though. But I don't know.
Temple was the other job, by the way. I think we did.
They might be dropping football. I sent you guys the link.
That's crazy.
I would just stick around, and just see what happens. I bet you a lot of other teams are going to have changes, so.
The best part, I don't know if you guys watched it. What was it, Thursday night that Temple was playing UTSA?
Friday night.
Friday night. Their athletic director's in the television booth, and he's in there, and they're talking to him about, the decision to fire Drayton. And as soon as he says the words, "At Temple, we want to compete for championships," Owen McCown takes just like a simple RPO and takes off for a 75-yard touchdown run as he's in the middle of the sentence. And I was like, "Oh, buddy, you got a long way to go."
Yeah, this is it of those jobs in the AAC. How would you rank them?
I would have had East Carolina at 1.
Yeah, I think so too.
And then,
even with like the stadium debt and all that stuff, I still think you can win there in a way that. Can you win at any of these other jobs?
FAU.
Yeah, but see, the thing is at ECU, you have like buy-in from a fan base that really wants you to compete. At FAU, outside of Danny, who's at those games?
Well, no, I wasn't challenging ECU. I was answering the second part, which is like, where of those other schools, where do you think you can win? I think that of FAU, Tulsa, Temple, Rice, Charlotte, I think FAU is the one where I feel, based on geography and even just being able to have the little bit that Lane had it, that shows there's and that was in CUSA. That was in a different conference, but
I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
I'm still going to use that as my proof positive. If I was a head coach trying to talk myself into this, then that's what I'd be looking at for sure.
God, they're all tough. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the market is like for those jobs. Like who are they going to get? I mean, that's why it's not surprising you elevate from within, because I think coaches, like the hotter coaches, will be more willing to either stay as a coordinator at a Power 4 school and stay at that level based on the uncertainty than ever before. And the money's great. So like you can stay where you are and wait for a Power 4 opening rather than, hey, I really want to be a head coach. I might do it. I think, we've seen that move made more in the past. I don't know if that's going to happen as much anymore.
I'm glad you mentioned the CUSA thing, because I went back and looked at FAU because I was talking to a coach, and he's like, even though the American's down this year, the American's still way better than the CUSA. And I think he's right. I mean, that year they were, okay, whatever. They lose Ohio State, they lose UCF. Those are your paycheck games. They win at Ball State. This is 2019 when they won 11 ball games. Wagner, Charlotte, which was that their first year in the FBS, 2019? Probably. Middle Tennessee, which at times has been decent, actually. Like that's for CUSA standards, that is a decent
Couldn't
win.
beat New Mexico State though, dadgummit.
Marshall, Old Dom, which again, was that Old Dom's first year in FBS?
No, they'd been up for a little bit.
It's 2017 was their first year?
Yeah, somewhere
16?
around 16. Yeah, 16, 17.
Okay. At Western, FIU, UTSA, and that would have been before Trailer, 2019.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Southern Miss, that was, I'm trying to remember who coached that Southern Miss team, but it might have been when they were really, really bad. UAB, and then obviously the bowl game. So I don't know. Like, I would rather live in Boca than in Tulsa. But as far as ability to win, I don't know how much better they are.
I still think the path is you find South Florida players who went to power conference schools that aren't getting playing time, or their position coach gets fired, or they're not happy being up north, and you just you get the right collection to be able to put together a roster that can be competitive. I think that is a come back home portal team.
Bud clearly hasn't been watching Tulsa King.
That's right. Tulsa's King's
You
great.
can get a lot
This
done
week,
in Tulsa. Yeah.
Are you guys surprised some of these are not even 2 years yet? Like they're making these moves quicker than ever at this
Yes.
level?
Tulsa
You are
was-
surprised?
I
Or you're
am.
not?
Tulsa
yeah,
was-
me too.
Tulsa was horrid, but Kevin Wilson is a coach with experience. And now you're just going to, like, unless you've got something planned, ready to go, that is somebody who could organizationally try to help you navigate the uncertain waters of college football's future.
That's what I would have said about Tom Herman too.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I was a little bit surprised. I mean, clearly they have Ray Lewis lined up, ready to go for the next job.
I didn't think Kevin Wilson made sense when they hired him.
You didn't?
No, just I thought it was a strange hire, and I think that they're just kind of moving on from it.
There's a lot of like Brennan Marion speculation there,
Yeah.
given that he's very connected to like the state of Texas, which is where you have to recruit out of high school for Tulsa quite a bit. So
Interesting.
I could see that.
All right. So I'll ask it one more time. If there's a job that might open up, what's got your eyes?
I was doing some numbers on like the worst passing performances of the weekend. Rice was number 1 in EPA loss on pass plays. Number 2 was UNC. Obviously, Matt Zenitz had the report that Mac's been telling everybody he's coming back. Does the Boston College result change that, we think?
He's coming back. It's a matter of if they want him back, is what you're saying, right? Like,
Well, he
he
intends
was
to
on
come
Sirius
back.
XM. He was on our afternoon show on Sirius, and he was like, that was one Chip reference last week. Like, he was talking to Sally, and he's all in and feels like he can still win. So I think it would be uncomfortable. Like, they would have to fire him, which, Chip, you know better. Think that happened? You think they're willing to do that?
No.
I don't either. So I think he gets one more year.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think a loss to Boston College changes that much.
It would have to be a highly emotional crap kicking at the hands of NC State on Saturday. That like home game against an NC State team that's way down from their standard. If North Carolina no-shows in that game in a way that just looks like they were just not prepared to go and compete and everybody's booing them, I don't know. Maybe that could change enough minds in an emotional way, but I do not think that the University of North Carolina wants to fire Mac Brown at the conclusion of this season. Administration, athletic department, I think they would very much enjoy if they did not have to do that. It's like, I don't know if the administration has ever rooted harder for North Carolina's football program than they will be on Saturday, hoping that North Carolina can just beat NC State, finish 7-5, go to a bowl game, probably in Charlotte, sell a bunch of boxes, and just move on to 2025 and whatever college sports is going to look like right now. That I think would be the path that they're probably rooting for.
Another job, I don't know what they're going to do. It's just I'm just thinking of possibilities. If there are no openings in the SEC this year, does Kentucky create one, knowing that if there are no other openings, this will be the most attractive we could possibly be on the coaching market? We'd be the only SEC job out there.
With the idea of going to get John Summerall and
Or
saying,
anybody.
hey, like,
Yeah.
You probably, if they run this back and have another nice year at Tulane, he'll have better options. But this year, that's the only option.
Summerall, anybody out there that's looking to kind of just move up. Like, of all the top options available, if Kentucky's the only SEC gig available, you're suddenly a lot more attractive to everybody.
Good point. All right. Coming up on the other side, we go under the hood with more from a crazy weekend in college football. It's upon further review. Next.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news,
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
highlights, and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
So Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, one of my favorite running bits in the tailgate is it's amazing. Mike Bobo's name keeps coming up for every single job available, according to the Cover 3 tailgate, with a relentlessness. Mike Bobo's supporters are trying to put Mike Bobo at North Carolina. They're trying to put Mike Bobo at Tulsa. They're trying to put Mike Bobo at Charlotte. I mean, just anywhere, it appears. Is everyone's rooting for Mike Bobo. Hey, and I know that Coach is a big-time fan here. So, Coach, they're rooting for you. You know, they're really rooting for you to get a head coaching job somewhere this offseason. It's good to know you have supporters like Mike Bobo. No, not for Cover 3. Sorry, we don't have any spots available. All right. Every single Monday, we like to clean out the notebook with all of our observations that couldn't fit the instant reaction show. We call it Pun for the Review. There were terrible calls. Do you want to go ahead and jump in?
After further review.
After further review.
After further review.
All right. Where do we want to start?
I'll go because I
Right.
saw some takes that I got to call out. Even
Let's
heard
go.
some potentially on the reaction pod that I just need to address.
That's what I like to hear.
Yes.
Right. So
Shirtless, were you?
one of us, yeah, that was going. It was a little chilly here. We had a cold front, so I definitely had the shirt on this past weekend. I saw Fornelli say it. I saw my guy Rosillo say it as well on Twitter. It was like, the committee's not going to have everybody left to choose. There aren't any good teams left to choose from. I would push back and say there are more good teams to choose from and less great teams to choose from, which is going to make for maybe the most entertaining playoff we've seen yet.
It would be the only one I've seen yet.
Well, no, I'm saying over the last 15 years, we would see it.
Hey,
I
this
would
is
say it would be
Can
even
you
more
imagine-
entertaining than the 4-team playoff.
I mean, can you imagine what we would have if we still had the 4-teamer this year? Like, there have been years where a team has been left out of the 4-teamer that I think you could conceivably say, if they got hot, they could win this. But not many. This year, we might have teams left out of the 12 that you're like, actually, if they get hot, they could win this thing. I think that's because at the top, the compression is pretty big. Like, none of these teams, there's no like LSU Joe Burrow team this year. Like, there's no like, Tebow Gators, Jameis Knowles. There's no like what the COVID Bama team, which was, just killed everybody the entire season. Like, the best teams are like more than a field goal worse than the best teams from years prior. And I think it's really interesting.
I do too.
See, the only pushback I'll have on that is and this was always my case going to what I was tweeting on the weekend, in the 4-team era, we rarely had more than 2 elite teams in the country in any season. That was why I was always, after a while, I was like, we don't really even need the 4-teamer. We could go back to the BCS because most seasons all you need was 2 teams because there were really only 2 great teams. Some years you would have 3. We never had 4. I don't think that's changed at all. I think it's the same situation we've been in. It's just now we're arguing over which good teams go in instead of which great teams.
But wait, so you think we'd be better off going back to 2 teams? You think that's all we need to determine the national champion?
Yeah.
And
if you want a better television product, you need 12-team playoff, which will then become a 16.
Wait. So you think you are certain that it is one of 2 teams?
I think that once the dust settles, because let's keep in mind we still have 2 weekends of play left. You might have a 12-0 Big Ten champion and then a 12-1 ACC champion or a 12-1 SEC champion compared to a bunch of other teams with 2 and 3 losses. Then yeah, I think the dust will have settled.
But so you are unequivocally saying that they would be that much better than any other team in this conversation?
Define better, because I think there's a difference between better and earning it. Because I feel like if you've lost twice, you might be the better team on paper, but you also lost twice. So you don't really deserve it anymore.
Are you saying that like you'd be willing to put down which 2 teams win the national title now?
No, because the season's not over yet.
But you think you got it narrowed down pretty?
I think I know one of. I think I'm fairly confident I can name at least 2 teams, and one of them will be in the title game. Yes, but I don't know what the bracket's going to look like, so I don't know if they'll both get there. I'm fairly confident either 1 or 2 of Oregon and Ohio State will be in the title game. Yes.
I would agree with you. I think that's very likely. But also, like, there are scenarios in which guys take late season leaps. And what if Drew or Nico take a late season leap? Because the rest of those teams around them are pretty solid. I don't think we can rule that out.
Like when the 9-7 Giants won a Super Bowl, but that's always been kind of my point. Like the Giants at 9-7 really shouldn't have had a chance to. It's like these games, like the results are supposed to matter. And this is again.
They absolutely have. Tell me a game that hasn't mattered.
For UFR. This is a good transition because this was kind of my point for UFR. I think like this, because the ESPN still beats us over the head with the playoff talk nonstop. And I think we've done a good job on the show, credit to Chip and Tom really for not just talking playoff nonstop, but it is less exclusionary this year. I feel like, because there are so many more teams that are still alive for the playoff, because it has redirected the attention back on the conference races. In many ways, that when there was only 4 playoff, who's in, like, well, shit, man, 98% of the country is not in, and it's Halloween. Now, like, we don't have that. Like 12 opens up, it's just exponentially more teams that are still alive. And I thought it was beautiful, and you guys pointed this out because you went 90 minutes on the reaction show, which was awesome. But like Mendoza's energy when Cal beat Stanford, like neither of those teams are playoff bound, but like they still, like, that kind of stuff still matters. Like these MAC races we have this week, that still matters. But I think, at least I have felt like it's not super exclusionary feeling anymore with all this who's in, because there are so many teams who are still alive for this thing. I mean, what FanDuel still has odds, and obviously, like, they pull down the odds for the teams that are just locks in, but 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11. Get 24 teams plus like the 7 that are basically locked, or like the 4 that are basically locked. I mean, we're talking like a quarter of the sport almost is still theoretically alive for this deal. Like that's crazy.
But you know what change you could have made that would have led to the same results this weekend and the same games mattering? Left it at 4, just made it the 4 conference champions. Because there's only a Power 4 now. Every single game that we talked about mattered this weekend would have still mattered, because Alabama losing knocked them out of the SEC race. Ole Miss losing knocked them out of the SEC race.
Sure.
Texas A&M losing kind of opens the door still for, because now they're playing a play-in game next week against Texas to face Georgia, which then gets in. If Texas A&M wins, then Georgia's got to win, and it needs a specific result in the Texas A&M game. All those games still matter. Indiana just got knocked out of the Big Ten title game last week by losing to Ohio State. You'd still have the same quote-unquote meaningful games. You just wouldn't have the extra inventory of 8 playoff games, which is what we call them, but they're just an invitational to the dance. It's a tournament. It's not a playoff. You have to play your way into a playoff.
I'd be cool with that. Sankey would not.
Right. I was going to say, I would be totally cool with that.
Yeah. So like they're going to want the extra teams, which normally they will get this year.
The foundation of my point this entire time has been, if your actual goal is to determine the best team in the country, you don't need a 12-team playoff. I thought for a while you needed 4, but I felt like the last decade kind of showed us the whole time we didn't even really need 4.
Now, see, here's what I would push back.
Of course it isn't. Yeah.
Here's what I would push back. And you mentioned the 9-7 Giants. Who did they play that year? It was the Patriots. If the Patriots were the best team, they would have beat them. That's the same thing I would challenge to anybody this year. Like, if Oregon or Ohio State are the best team, they'll beat if let's say a 3-loss SEC team comes in, or a 2-loss other team that's not as deserving, or,
So do you think the undefeated Patriots weren't the best team in the NFL that year?
No, they would have beat the Giants if they did. Like, you have to be but isn't that the standard by which we would judge that?
So do you think Georgia's the best team in the country this year?
I think they could be if they win it all.
I think
they lost.
I think Oregon's the best team in the country.
I think Oregon
my point is,
I think Ohio State might be. But like, that's what I don't
love.
You're
putting way too much. You're putting all the emphasis on one game out of a 20-game sample because they put the word Super Bowl on it. The Patriots were the best team in the NFL that year.
Correct. That's why you want to have that be the ultimate prize, just like you want to be the national champion is the ultimate prize. You can have your conference championship or your regular season winners, and you can celebrate that all you want, but the ultimate prize is the national championship. You can be kings of the regular season. I mean, that's what Peyton Manning's knock was all along until he got his first Super Bowl. Greatest, regular season quarterback we've ever seen. That might be Lamar Jackson, but it still doesn't mean the same unless you win the big one. That's what makes all of it special, because then you have a great regular season, and then you've got this really meaningful, massive prize at the end of the year, which ramps up the stakes. And if you can get there by getting through a couple teams on the way there in the postseason, then you deserve to win the national champion or the Super Bowl.
I'm going to look at it more as the last team standing.
Yeah,
You know,
it's not necessarily the best team.
It's not the best team.
Which
It'll
is
be the
my
last,
point. That's my problem with the entire process.
Hey, I'm just saying it's something different. Okay. It's something new. It's something different. It's the last team standing. And it was so funny. I was getting into a little bit of a back and forth with one of our editors over the weekend. They were coming to me thinking that that they were going to find a wiser approach than, I think the quote was like, all these Gen Zers being too nice to Indiana was the pretext for the way we were talking about this. And I was like, oh, au contraire, because college football's history has been awarding your wins and losses, not your overall quality, right? I mean, like, Danny, how many amazing teams that would have had power ratings that would have been number one in the country missed out on being able on bowl games and national championships? Because guess what? You lost, because throughout college football's history, the games have to matter, and they didn't play no hypotheticals. It was who had the best record with the best wins at the very end of the season. You were the national champion. So it's almost like a little bit of a throwback or a retro take now in this new expanded playoff era. Like, yeah, the games have to matter because that's the way we've always done it in college football. All right. We good on playoff stuff? We're going to be right back at this tomorrow night.
I mean, the Big 12 is going to be fascinating.
256 scenarios remain. Currently.
How many teams are alive?
8.
That's the number. That's
I thought it was 9.
Is it 9?
I thought it was 9 of the 16 teams are still technically alive. But maybe
they're offering. Yes, there are 9. Even West Virginia is still alive.
Right, because there's still the way that this all gets locked up at 5-3. So currently, and by the way, the 9-team scenarios, once I lay this out, if you're listening to this and haven't looked at it, I think you'll understand. So currently there are 4 teams tied in first place: BYU, Iowa State, Colorado, Arizona State. All 4 of those teams have 6-2 conference records. The craziest scenarios involve all of them losing and falling back to being 3-loss teams. But their opponents, BYU is playing Houston. Iowa State's playing Kansas State. That one's going to have a lot of people's attention. Colorado is playing Oklahoma State. Arizona State is playing Arizona. So the all 4 teams lose seems a little unlikely. The way things are set up with the current tiebreaker scenarios, things do break in the direction of Arizona State and Iowa State. That would be the result if all of them win. But that is not necessarily going to be the case because, for example, if Iowa State loses and everybody else wins, you're going to be having Arizona State against BYU. The same game that we just saw would be replayed for the championship. If Colorado loses, that's another Arizona State against Iowa State. If BYU slips up and loses again, well, now you might have an opportunity for Colorado to be able to slip back into the Big 12 title game. Who's going to be there?
I like Arizona State.
We think Iowa State beats Kansas State?
Not necessarily.
The thing I'm most confident in is that Arizona State beats Arizona.
Right.
Because Arizona State is playing well. Arizona is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, and they're out of bowl contention, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is the rivalry aspect of we want to beat our rival, but there's also a chance that that's a dead team walking. So that's, and I'm not highly confident in any of it. But
I think Colorado's going to beat Oklahoma State.
I think Colorado's going to beat Oklahoma State, but I think Kansas State finally got its footing again over the weekend. By the way, did y'all oh man, I don't want to speculate in case it's something personal, but something was up with Chris Kleiman. Did y'all see him getting emotional in some of these post-game press conferences during the loss and talking about how the team had his back? I don't have anything on that, but it made me happier when I saw Kansas State be able to come out and get a good win to get back on track, because if something bad was going on and it was paired with the whole season just sliding right off the rails, that would have been no fun, bad vibes all around.
I'll private chat that.
Okay.
I don't want to share. It's not my info to share.
Okay.
There's a man with a ladder and a leaf blower in my yard. I don't know why he's here.
Do you have gutters?
I do, but I've done okay. I don't know. Maybe he just showed up without telling us he was coming.
So I would, if Kansas State is, turning things around after losing their footing a little bit, I could see Kansas State beating Iowa State. And then therefore, I think setting us up with an Arizona State BYU rematch in the Big 12 title game in Jerry World.
If BYU wins, it's locked, correct?
If BYU, no one
it's only Iowa State or Arizona State to lose.
I think only Arizona State, quote unquote, controls its destiny.
Correct.
So if all the favorites win except Houston upsets BYU, then we actually get Colorado, Arizona State.
Mm-hmm. Which is what the TV network will want.
Yeah. Hey, do you like this?
Would you guys watch an 8-team Big 12 playoff?
No.
I think I would. It'd be hilarious.
Hold
It would
on.
be hilarious.
Is
And
it gonna
all 8 probably could win.
If it starts on like December 18th.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I would watch that. I don't know if
So we leave the Big 12 out of the other playoff.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like let's say that somehow Tulane jumps up and is ahead of whoever wins the Big 12. If your market could put this together, I would watch the hell out of an 8-team Big 12 playoff.
Will there be a concert by Mace during the game?
we got Neo this
They'll
year
play for the belt, the WWE belt. It'll be the Big 12 championship belt.
The funny thing is, if we did an 8-team playoff, I think we should get a special bid for Kansas, because Kansas would go and win that 8-team playoff.
Yeah, they would right now.
They're about to go beat Baylor.
Nobody wants to see Kansas in the Big 12 playoff right now.
Nobody wants to see Kansas. That's the team you don't want to see right now.
But I also
they can win the big one.
This is where I think you would want to have the Mountain West champ play the American champ for a play-in spot too. That I would watch, like Boise State versus Tulane or Army, one of those type playing games.
That was good. All right, we got a couple other sort of conference title game outlooks moving ahead. Danny, do you have anything else for UFR? Any other reaction to our reaction?
I think that was it.
Okay.
I think that was it.
I got one more.
All right.
Danny, why do you hate fun?
What?
Oh, yeah. Okay, we need to hash this out because I don't hate fun at all. You know what I love? I love having fun as much as anybody. But you know what I don't love? I don't love, like, there should be occasions where you celebrate, and there should be occasions where you keep your emotions in check. And beating a 6-5 team, or potentially getting your 6th win, is not one of those situations that I would recommend going all out in your celebration, which is to, like, storming the field should be reserved for moments that go down in football history. Like Tennessee beating Alabama for the first time in 20 years is worth it. Go give me the sea of orange on the field and they pan out. But Oklahoma beating Alabama for your 6th win of the season and Alabama's 3rd loss of the season is not worthy of storming the field. It's just not. It diminishes when you actually should do it. Same thing with Auburn. Like, you get your 6th win and you beat a Texas A&M team with their 3rd loss of the season. What are we doing? It's supposed to be something special. And guess what's going to happen? They're going to ruin it for everybody, because all of a sudden there's going to be more rules put in place. Someone's going to get hurt, and then it's going to be banned altogether, and we're all going to lose out.
Keep that same energy. You better bring up Tempe too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And if you're going to do it, damn it, make sure you only do it once when it says 0 on the clock.
I just wanted to make Danny say that for all the commenters in the chat who 10 minutes ago were saying that I was the one who doesn't like to have fun, and they were championing Danny. And now here he is yelling at kids for having a good time because they enjoyed their game.
I encourage a good time. I want to see a good time.
You don't. Nope. You got rules. You want everybody at home by 10 p.m. No alcohol at the party. You're going to be there the entire time. Yeah, no. I want everybody to have a good time, just responsibly.
So I will say, Oklahoma does not get like any field storming opportunities,
because
they rarely play anybody at home.
They still didn't.
They don't. They are the team that gets beat. They are the team that gets stormed on.
Right. So keep it that way. Now it's going to be like, we beat Oklahoma. It's no big deal. See them storm the field against Alabama.
I mean, given how tough it is to get people to these games, right? Like the athletic directors are fighting against 80-inch TVs that are cheap now and cold beer in your fridge and the comfort of your own couch. That's a cool like memory. Those are some experiential things that you can't do at home. I'm all for the field storming. Like storm away. I think what Clemson
do it like
does,
Clemson. Just do it every game.
Really cool. Yeah,
yeah.
man.
Do it like I actually think Clemson's tradition of going on the field is awesome. Meet at the paw, whatever they call it. Like let's everybody do it. Let's just open the floodgates and everybody can go on the field after the game and get your photo ops and your selfies and make your TikToks. It's great.
I think sports should be fun. And I think you should have fun.
Too.
That's
as long as nobody gets hurt. As long as
that's
Wayne
the problem,
Burton's not
though.
around.
But like somebody has to at least be aware that the more likelihood the chances go up if there's fans that have had a few beers, the cold ones, or whatever they're drinking. If they're on the field, the chances somebody gets hurt go up dramatically.
Survival of the fittest. That's what life's all about.
I've got a few little stats things.
All right.
This weekend had some horrendous passing performances.
I mean, you just mentioned the North Carolina one.
Did you guys watch San Jose
on Friday night?
Walker Eager was 4 of 22. 4 of 22. Now, he didn't throw a pick, so his EPA was actually not all that low. But, I mean, at some point, is the other kid like secretly doing the sit out red shirt thing? I'm just speculating in my head, like what makes sense as to why you wouldn't go to someone else. And I know the weather in that game was not immaculate.
Messy.
4 of 22 is pretty rough. I also think we had the worst play of the weekend. This comes from the Rice game in which Rice lost to UAB. Negative 12 EPA on this play. So it's right before the half. There is 6 seconds left, and it's 2nd and goal with the UAB 2. Got a 98-yard pick six for UAB. It's hard to get worse EPA on that, especially because with that little time left in the half, like there's no expected value, even for a stop. It's the only way you can get like worse than that would be, I guess, if you're at the 1.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. Here's the expectation. We thought we were going to get 6, and we got 6 the other way.
Right. Jalen Milroe, not the best game. I know you guys covered that in pretty good detail.
Do you know what I didn't see in real time? And I don't think we talked about it. But again, I'm trying to detail all that is always tough. But a lot of Alabama fans are getting on him for the tackling effort on the pick. They got run back.
Given how injury prone, or I don't want to say injury prone, given how nicked up prone he seems to be, I'm kind of okay with that.
That's crap too, because on the one interception, he chased the guy down from behind.
Good. All right. Good
like,
call.
because I was actually going to tweet a joke. It's like, hey, maybe Bill O'Brien knew what he was talking about. Did you see Milroe's closing speed on that tackle?
That's a good joke. The other thing was, regardless of the fan sentiment, which I was just glad to test it. It did not stand out to me like poor effort, but fans have been kind of going crazy over that one. Going back and getting to listen to Kalen DeBoer in the post game, which we had not gotten a chance to hear when we went live. I think he's disappointed in his quarterback. I think he's disappointed in his offense, but he talked a lot about the missed opportunities, and he was very quickly going through and identifying third downs, plays where you could have moved the chains, you could have hit an explosive play. He said the quote was, we just weren't seeing the ball, that it was just, you were out there and it just wasn't going. And that is your offensive genius head coach and the 3-point performance and playoffs on the line. I totally get why Alabama fans are furious with Kalen DeBoer right now. So it'll be obviously don't lose the Iron Bowl. My message to every single Alabama coach, but that's going to be an interesting offseason as he reconstructs that roster, maybe make some changes on the coaching staff. We'll see. And tries to get Alabama poised for a year with, and I'm very serious about this, real job pressure. I mean, year 2, you should not be facing real job pressure. But I think that this is a spot. Saturday night's going to sting for a long time.
This is Bama related, and it is playoff related. So I'm sorry for bringing it up in the 12th or the 12 o'clock minute. If A&M beats Texas and goes to the SEC championship game, do we think the conference championship protectionism that I think all of us on the show speculated about and mostly agree will happen, do we think it extends to a 4-loss team?
Our girl,
it would be 9-4.
Mackenzie she actually texted, she must be watching during the show. She hit me up with a tweet on Texas A&M. She said, quote, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Beat Texas, make the SEC champ, lose to Georgia, pick up your 4th loss, and you're probably out, ? Or lose to Texas, pick up your 4th loss, and you're definitely out. So their only option is beat Texas, beat Georgia in the SEC championship, and the automatic bid.
What a great system.
It is. If they do it, they'll be worthy. They'll have earned their way in, Tom. They will have earned it.
Should you throw the game against your rival that you haven't played in a decade? Light up the chat. Let's hear your thoughts.
I think I would much rather play Texas A&M, yes, at plus 1,000 to make the playoff, than I would play Texas A&M money line at plus 180 to beat Texas.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a chance that the protectionism for these conference championship losers in the big 2 conferences might extend to a 4-loss team.
Ooh,
Should it? Don't know.
They do run it.
All right. So who a loss in the conference championship game for Texas A&M to pick up the 4th loss would not be a bad loss. It'd be a loss to Georgia.
Unless it's like if it looks like the South Carolina game where they got their doors blown off.
Right. That's the thing we don't know, because I do think it matters how you look.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, when they expand it to 16, it'll solve the problem.
I do have a list. We need to expand the playoff. We need to get rid of buys, and we need to let's see.
I would prefer, honestly, to this format, and I've made my feelings on it all known, but I would prefer a 16-team playoff with home games every round through the semifinals to this. Give me that, and I won't bitch as much.
So you get first round
agreed.
And quarterfinals are home games.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get your semifinals and title game neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do automatic bids?
I think that what you could do is, to counter Lane's complaints from this week before he took care of it himself against Florida, if you get to your conference championship game, you're in. So there's 8 spots right there, and then 8 at-larges. Well, 7 at-larges in the highest ranked G5.
7 at-larges, highest ranked G5. You make it to your conference championship game, you're in.
Mm-hmm. Also, everybody has to play at least a 9 game conference schedule, preferably 10.
Because that's
that way you don't have to worry about, who's playing who in non-con. Because again, as long as you get to your SEC title game, you're in.
I don't love that as much, but I think like removal of non-conference games is not good, especially if we're going to go to more of like a condensed format with fewer lower division teams. But in the current format, sure.
We're talking about for like the data points, like the cross.
Yeah, the data points, and I also think it's cool to be able to travel. Like there's that story about like the Oregon fans who got to go to Tennessee like a decade ago, and those are unique experiences that you just don't get. Now, granted, if you have an 18-team conference,
right,
it's hard to. It's hard to hit all those road games.
I saw Oregon fans all over Ann Arbor the night before the game. I mean, that was might as well have been a non-conference game. It just happened to count for their conference schedule. I was just pulling this up. So if Texas A&M beats Texas but loses to Georgia, the Texas win would be the only thing that holds weight when you're trying to make final decisions.
Could LSU get ranked again if LSU beats Oklahoma? I think so.
Yeah.
I mean,
because they are LSU.
Missouri could lose to, well, they don't want Missouri to drop out, but if Colorado were to lose somehow, which I don't think they will, Illinois probably doesn't lose. UNLV could.
If Illinois plays like it did against Rutgers, it could lose, but they won. So.
Yeah.
They just need to run the touchdown play every single time.
Let's single cover Pat Bryant, even though Zachary Franklin's been out for 2 quarters now. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I think the issue for protectionism with Texas A&M, which again, they do need to beat Texas, and
yeah, it's not a given.
It's not a given.
Texas is pretty good.
So I think the protectionism could become problematic for Texas A&M because when you just look at the rest of the profile. There's, they'll have the Missouri win that you talk about. They could have the LSU win, but like real wins of significance when it comes to the final at-large bids, other teams might be. Protectionism would bounce Indiana. Texas A&M 4-loss would get in over Indiana. That would drive people crazy, but I think that 9-4 Texas A&M title game loser would get in over 11-1 Indiana. Not saying should, I'm saying would.
Yeah, but I mean, let's be real. Like in that idea, the SEC and Big Ten would probably have 4 auto bids each anyway.
What?
Like that's the only way they're agreeing to it.
Oh, no, I'm talking about like in the 2024 season.
Oh, my bad.
If we face a scenario where Texas A&M beats Texas, goes to the SEC championship game, loses to Georgia in the SEC championship game, they're 9-4 on Selection Sunday. We're fighting for these final at-large spots. That's going to be one that's going to break people's brain because that 9-4 Texas A&M team gets in over 11-1 Indiana.
Yes. I hope it happens.
Yeah, and now you're thinking about it, and now you're like, oh no.
Let's just
Sorry
let
to throw
it on fire.
Yeah.
Oh no. All right, and then on Tuesday night, I'll get to ask my next question. That's it's Clemson an at-large candidate?
I don't think so, but maybe.
I don't think so.
You look at their schedule and then how badly they lost to Georgia. They're going to have a very weak case.
Is their opponent?
What?
Is their opponent an at-large candidate?
Is South Carolina an at-large? Potentially.
I'm trying to think like what the SEC's talking points are going to be, and if I was running the SEC, I would definitely point to, hey, our quarterback got hurt in one of those losses.
Because Sellers got hurt against LSU. Yeah. We'll see.
What I learned is if your quarterback gets hurt, you're out.
That we learned that too, but if he's back, maybe it's maybe it means those things don't count.
No, that was the best Quinn Ewers reaction. Like,
Oh, because he's
your quarterback's hurt. Sorry,
get him out. Sorry.
Playoff. That's the way this goes.
Speaking of injuries, we haven't talked about it much, but it will become a talking point. I'm telling you right now. More and more, the playoff is going to be determined by whichever team is still somewhat healthy by the end of it. Because we have not really considered the impact of playing all these extra games on these rosters. And you're going to get to the title game, and there's going to be a lot of backups playing in these games.
That's how the Georgia Bulldogs win the championship.
And in the end, the same teams win every time.
All right. Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to be back with our big game breakdown, taking you inside the matchups to watch in X Factors for a loaded rivalry weekend. Then on Tuesday night, we'll be live. Let's call it about 11:30 p.m. Eastern time. Once we get that top 25 announced, the show is at 8. So we'll have it about 8:15 or so. We'll be live with our reactions to that and more playoff talk. Then Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, come hang out. We'll get you locked and loaded with all of our best bets so you can have it heading into the holiday. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip _Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.